This week, we learn what it means to be cool.
Cooler.
Coolest.
Yare yare. Is that what we're doing?
Hi, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Garrett.
And haven't you heard? We watch anime. Garrett, this week, I decided to give you a little treat. I've noticed really recently that I've been giving you a really nutrient-dense diet, so to speak, right? Been giving you a lot of heavy topics like Parasite, a lot of ecchi fan service in the form of Food Wars and many other type of things like that, and a lot of topics in detail to go over. So I thought I'd treat you, give a little break, and so we were going to stumble into something that's an easy watch, a comedy show that's really good out there. It's fun and easy. So that's why this week we decided to tackle the show Sakamoto desu ka? Or in English, haven't you heard? I'm Sakamoto. So before we go into the whole jerkiness of how that title sounds, I first want to hear your 1 or 2 opinion teaser trailer on what to expect for a Noob.
Haven't you heard? I'm Sakamoto. If you dust the ceiling, it's like living in a snow globe.
It's like a haiku of how cool he is. Oh, he did a haiku, and I'm listening, just thinking about all the greatness you are. Yeah, this show is really awesome. It's based off of a comedy manga that happened from 2012 to 2015. It's completely done. It's completed. It's not ongoing anymore. But the anime came together in 2016.
Okay.
One of the rare instances, not really rare, but one of the, for us, it's good that we're highlighting, this is from a female mangaka, which you can kind of tell from how the boys look. They're very, girly looking. They're very feminine, androgynous. And
so the artist is female.
The artist is female, yeah. And so is, weirdly enough, Full Metal Alchemist's main artist and author is a female. So
yeah, I guess the male characters did have more of a feminine Final Fantasy-esque type aesthetic to them.
Yeah, and there was a lot less fan service on the female side, so you can tell what was really.
But the men were shirtless all the time.
The men were shirtless a lot. We were talking a lot of Abbage. So I also had to look up what this audience was based on, because when I was watching it, I was like, this could be kind of geared towards kids. If whose humor is this for? And when I looked online, it says it's seinen. So technically, this is kind of more of an adult, high school teenager adult comedy. Yeah. But it doesn't look like it's so far above their heads that it's too bad, over their heads. And it's very weirdly true, which I think is we can talk about a little bit as well, is that it comes in 2-part vignettes regardless of the episode, which is very true to the manga. So I've read both, and it's really the same thing. It's you get very small snippets. And it's like a Saturday morning cartoon twice in an episode. So,
and sometimes it's 10 minutes, but sometimes it's 15 and 5, or 5 and 15. It's not necessarily even, but there's always 2 pieces to the pie.
Right, and it ends, and you never have to worry about what happened to the person prior. The first part, it's done. You don't have to think about it after that. The second part, you're good. So, Garrett, what did you think so far? Explain your experience, and what did you think about the main character and his coolness? Sakamoto, which we don't know his first name. We just know his name Sakamoto.
Right. Sakamoto isn't just cool, Kyle. He's cool, cooler, and coolest.
He's like Bret the Hitman Hart. The coolest there is, the coolest there was, and the coolest there ever will be. You know what I'm saying?
Or so the intro song tells us. Yeah. I have to say that I'm going to use a word that you don't use often in your daily vocabulary.
Yeah.
Each episode delivered 1 to 2 guffaws, literally, where I sat on the couch and went, ha! And
me too. I did that a bunch. I'm pretty sure I scared the cat, because where I think
some things are just so stupid.
Yeah, they're stupid. The gag that I think Japanese people do really well is the earnest, ridiculous pose. Imagine if a boy, just like in the show, and we'll go over episode by episode, so did the flash dance pose, where the water splashes, but earnestly does it, using water from a Pocari sweat bottle, and it hits those notes every time, and it's really funny. So, so what we're gonna do today, because there's not a lot of themes and topics to talk about, it's really trying to break down the show, what makes it funny, what were some things that you liked.
All right. So Sakamoto is a high school student, which is 95% of the characters we've covered.
We are now again in high school.
And he is Slick Rick, man. He is the coolest cat. And he's sort of like a kudere in that he is unflappable.
Right.
You cannot shake him. You cannot get him off balance. There was actually an episode dedicated to him keeping his physical balance.
Yes.
But he's absolutely the coolest cat in the whole school. Women love him.
Yes.
Men want to be him.
Right.
And he's just unimpressed by it all. And he's on this greater mission. And at times he comes across as a real prat. But the situations that he finds himself in, the support, it's like every sitcom you've ever seen. Like Ross isn't interesting. Ted isn't interesting from How I Met Your Mother. Sakamoto, I guess he's kind of interesting, but it's everyone reacting around him.
Right, exactly.
It just gives you belly laughs, or gave Kyle and I belly laughs.
Yeah, I thought it was hysterical. And I think, it's the type of cool that is kudere, right? This is why I'm really appreciating getting the verbiage, because he's non-phased by most things. He doesn't seem to care that he's cool. That's the second thing. He doesn't seem to be like, he doesn't use a lot of slang that makes you very, to be like, I'm the cool cat here, I'm hip. I use like hip slangs. He's cool because he does everything perfectly. And I think that's his jam, right? Like no matter what it is, he always does it perfectly. He's never in a bad spot. No matter, even if people try to do it, he ends up even looking cooler. Like my favorite thing, so we'll start with episode 1, is when he was in the bathroom and they tried throwing a big bucket of water over the top. And then he opens the door and he got his Sakamoto pose, and like he's got an umbrella in his hand. He's like, oh, a summer rain in the bathroom. How nice. Like that kind of stuff. And that's funny. Now,
for those listening at home, this is something that I've had to learn. You just referred to it as the Sakamoto pose.
Yes.
And for anyone who can't see us, you have to wear glasses.
Yes.
And your 2 fingers
yes.
have to be pressed to the bridge of the glasses on your nose, as if very thoughtfully. And while you're thinking, your glasses go from being transparent to shiny silver cool. Could you dive into this a little bit more?
Yes, this is the Megane character, right? And I thought it's also really interesting that he's always like flipping off people, because he always has to use his middle finger to touch his glasses, but there's been many cases where he's just straight up flipping the bird at people while he's talking. Yeah, he's the Megane character. The Megane character is the glasses guy who, and usually it's the smart character that is, when they hit the glasses hit the light so much that you lose. They become windows to reflections of the world outside, and they look like Cyclops from X-Men. They're just really shiny and bright. And like, if you go on any memes out there, there's people who do that where they like look at their glasses and they push it up, and their eyes like to shoot beams out of them. Like, it's really funny, like the ways that people have noticed it. And he is that character. He's the mix of the Megane character, a kudere, with like the perfect man, so to speak. So let's start with episode 1, because I think one of the threads that we need to pull on Sakamoto is that he's not just cool, but everybody hates him for being cool, and so much so they always try to mess with him, and it always ends up backfiring in their face, and he ends up looking cooler afterwards. So it's like lather, rinse, repeat, and then they're all just like, oh man, I can't beat Sakamoto. He's just so cool, like that kind of stuff. So let's go through his interactions with his school.
Well, can I say there's something, and I don't want to go off on too deep of a tangent. There was an animation or a set piece that they did in the first episode that I didn't see in any follow-up episode that I really dug. And so I don't remember all the characters' names, but there's 3 primary dudes at the school that want to mess with Sakamoto. We hate him because we can't be him.
Right.
And I think kind of the leader of this trio, his name is Achan. And Achan both hates Sakamoto, but also sort of has boy love for Sakamoto.
Yeah.
But they have these scenes where him and his 2 buddies are, and again, it's animation. They're in the schoolyard, like tossing a ball to one another.
Volleyball. They're playing a volleyball, like volley.
The camera, because it's animation. The camera is sort of like this 80-foot view above them. Yeah. And every once in a while, they like lose the ball, and it just sort of filters off like the side of the screen. I love that. I don't know. I thought it was great.
Yeah, because it ended with him being like, he stole from me, really important, your maiden heart, and stuff like that. He's like, oh. So let's talk about those groups, because I think those 3 are a good foil, because it's kind of like a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner situation with them.
Yeah.
Like, even when they like him, they still want to mess with him. And they just keep going for it. Like, even though one has like a boy love interactions with him,
Yeah.
which we'll go over in one of my favorite moments later, but is the beginning show. Let's talk about how they try to mess with him. How do they try to mess with him? How does everybody try to mess with him in the beginning? And let's just go through each interaction.
Can you kick us off, because I'm thinking of so many things in episodes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'm forgetting. I downloaded so much info this week. I'm forgetting what that first episode was like. I remember the umbrella. I remember in the there was also something in like
eraser. They tried to put a chalk eraser on the door, which is such a classic like kitty, BS thing. Yeah. And he caught it, and he did it like a Sakamoto pose while he caught it, and all the girls were like, yeah! And they were so excited to see him catch it with such flair. God, he's cool.
Right. And also, he goes to sit down in his seat in very classic schoolboy fashion. They pull the seat out from under him, but he freezes in midair and just sits with his legs crossed.
Or they dumped his desk out of the window, and then he decided to have a real like protagonist, like looking out the window moment where he's like, oh, it's just such a lovely spring day, and he opens the window and he has like cherry blossoms are flying behind him. Like that made me guffaw, so to speak. That'll be our magic word of the day. It made me chortle, so to speak. Yeah. And I was like, this show is wild. It's wild, and it's universally funny to me. So so that was the first episode, and then they also tried to get him. They're like, okay, this is it. We tried the eraser thing, that didn't work. We tried the old pail in the bathroom trick, and that didn't work. We tried to take away his destiny to work. So now we're going to actually just straight up kidnap.
Yes, and so they bring him to the science room,
right?
And they say, we're gonna beat you up in here, and this is how it's gonna end. And somehow a fire starts.
He had cigarettes, and he left them like on the ground.
That's right. One of the trio, the bad guys, antagonists, were smoking cigarettes, and so like a chemical fire starts in the room, and so they're like freaking out, man. They gotta get out, but like the door's locked, and like the cell phone's not working, or they don't have the cell phone. And Sakamoto's like, would you like me to take care of this? And he starts dancing around the fire in a very only the strong bamba way. Bamba way.
It's like a couple where like it's like speed skating but on land, just like But it's, by the way, also shirtless, completely shirtless in this situation. So once again, a little fan service for the ladies.
Right. And so the trio, they say to themselves, oh my goodness, he's trying to create a wind vacuum around the fire. We should go help him. So now everyone's
doing the banana way. Yeah.
And then you take it from here. Then I think they're like...
really, they thought he was doing like some sort of like physics experiment with the fire, but really like the faculty room was below, and so I thought if they stomped a lot, he would get someone's attention because they were locked in.
Right.
But then they ended up being like, they felt completely defeated because it was, man, that was the best workout we've ever had and seen. And that was really, and then it ends with like the volleyball moment, and like one of the characters got started to get a little boy lovey attracted to Sakamoto, which would you blame him? He's so cool. So let's get into the second episode where we learn about the two characters that we learn about is Yuya Sera, who is who is the kind of wannabe model amateur, wants all the attention from the girls, has like beautiful golden locks, and then another character who is kind of the pushover gopher of the group, and Sakamoto. And each of those times he teaches them a little bit of lessons, and it all took was a little bit of a B. So let's start with Yuya Sera. What happened with that?
Yuya Sera has a very big ego. Apparently he did like a little bit of modeling. And he was trying to show off to like the female classmates, like, "Hey, look at me in this magazine. Like, so cool, girls." DGAF, because they're like, "Is Sakamoto around? That's all we care about."
and like the women are like obsessed with Sakamoto so much so like they want to know. He's not even just attractive. He's like an enigma. He's a puzzle they want to solve. So Yuya Sera wants to, and he was the one that pulled the chair that made him have to like sit in place. Right. So but all of a sudden we get an enemy, an intruder on the classroom. What happened there, Garrett?
An intruder on the Ugh. So, so probably because Sakamoto opened the window in the previous episode to pose in the window way, a bee enters the classroom, and everyone flips the F out. I don't know if everyone in Japan is allergic to bees.
Right. This is like a hornet. Therefore, all women evacuate the building. All men realize now their lives are forfeit. Or save the women and children. Right. Get on the lifeboats while you can. That's how serious this is.
And then the teacher yells, "Everyone, rip off your clothes. Bees are attracted to dark objects." So everyone's like, woo! And tosses their clothes into the sky. And this guy, Sarah, is wearing bumblebee
underwear. Yeah. And also that's where you learn that Yuya Sarah has quite a pronounced gut for a model as well.
That's another thing that's pretty prevalent, because they even have like an episode half dedicated to him being overweight.
Yes.
Like later on. And I'm like, this guy's not that overweight. Make me feel bad about myself.
Yeah, he's the guy that like looks better with his clothes on, kind of thing.
I guess. But so
the bee, seeing his only black uniform, he sets his eyes onto our boy Sakamoto.
But he's got chopsticks. If I'm not mistaken.
he's got a what are those?
A protractor.
No, what's the thing that used to make circles? What's that called?
Protractor.
Oh, okay, it's a protractor. Yeah, protractor.
Yeah, and he catches the bee with a protractor, and Sarah or one of them goes, "Oh my God, he stabbed the bee in the air." But Sakamoto is not cruel to animals. So he did not stab that bee in the air. He caught it between the prongs.
Yes.
Of the,
like a chopstick, like
Daniel-san.
Yeah, Daniel-san, yeah, like Karate Kid. Yeah. And he lets him out with no problem. And all the girls ended up going, yeah! And all the men were like, you know what, Sakamoto, you're all right. But
here's the thing. Sarah was his enemy. Not his enemy. Sarah saw himself as Sakamoto's enemy. Yeah. But Sakamoto doesn't have any enemies.
Right,
so instead of being like, look at you, overweight in bumblebee underwear, man.
Yeah.
He makes him feel better about himself.
Yes, he says, you know what? You're good at making me laugh. You know, making people laugh. So, and the guy goes, you know what? I'm going to take up comedy. Forget modeling. I'm now a comedian. And so the rest of the series is Sarah making terrible Japanese pun jokes, which would clearly fly over your head, and we'll explain that a little bit later, because there's a lot of things that are Japanese about this show that I really have to explain to you. But first, so then we'll go on and we learn about another character whose name is Kubota, who is the chubby freckled guy. He's Yoshinobu Kubota. He's a gopher, and he's like kind of the classic, you know, when punks make fun of him, pick on him. Yeah. They constantly want to take his stuff from him. So tell his story. What happened with him?
Well, so Sakamoto comes across Kubota after he's being bullied by these two other characters who they're like his worst nightmare, and they shake him down for money all the time. And he's clearly just been like shoved around, dusted up, and he's like saying how he lied to his mom that he was sick and he needed money so that she would give him money that he could then give to his bullies.
Yeah. And
then Sakamoto negs the hell out of him and is like, "You are so."
He pulls a Kama. He pulls a Kama. He's like, "No, you're worthless. You're nothing." And then he's like, "Oh, you want money?" And like, "Go for it."
So instead of beating up these guys, which might be in another anime. Yeah. Or instead of leaving this guy alone or like drawing it out, he goes, "I know how I'm going to solve this." Cut to Wac Donald's.
Okay, we're going to have to take a very long pause for Wac Donald's at some point, but continue on the story.
So you see, so you cut to Wac Donald's where you can buy a Big Wac.
A Big Wacosetto. Okay.
Anyway, so Sakamoto gets himself and Kubota hired at Wac Donald's.
At Wac Donald's.
The manager immediately sees Sakamoto and is like, "You're working the register.
You're the hottie. You're the piece of man meat we're putting up front."
And all of a sudden, it's like midday on a Monday, and it's the longest line outside the Wac Donald's you've ever seen.
Those big wackos aren't going to sell themselves, Garrett. Sometimes you have to.
And so Kubota is like really upset. He's like, I don't need this job.
Yeah.
This is BS. I'm back here. I'm like burning myself on things. They called him operations manager, which basically meant he was like fry boy.
Yeah.
But in like the middle of the rush, you see him like burn himself on like the first set of fries.
Yeah.
And then he's getting better, and you see he's like getting more comfortable. And it's like 5 seconds later, but it flashed forwards, and he in the beginning he's like, I'm gonna quit. I'm first day I'm
done.
Here.
I'm outsies.
But it must have been a week or two later, and he's excited. He's like, it's my first payday.
Right.
He's like, I've earned this. You know, this is my money. I put in the hard work and I reap the reward. Also, quick side note, at McDonald's, you don't get your order unless your final thing on the menu is a smile from Sakamoto.
This made me pee my pants because I don't even know if that's like a thing that happens or like was supposed to happen, but like one of the bullies was ordering his Big Wac seto, and then like they're like, "Go on, buddy, you can do it," and he's like, "A smile to like that kind of stuff," and he was blushing, and he was just so excited to get us. I'll take for takeout all day, like that kind of stuff. I peed myself when I heard that. That was so funny.
So Kubota has reached this like new level of like self-worth, and he's working the fry machine or whatever.
Yeah.
And the manager says, "Hey, when you're done with this, you can bust on out of here."
Right.
But unfortunately, the two bullies who originally were shaking him down for money, they show up not intentionally to find him, but just because they want a Big Wac.
Right.
And so they show up
with Big Wac sauce.
No, it's gum. It's gum paste. Gum.
No, I'll explain that too. Go for it.
Okay. So anyway, they show up and they see Kubota and they're like, "Hey, boy, don't you remember us? Hey." And he's trying to ignore them. And eventually they're like, "You better meet us at the river park afterwards, or there's going to be trouble." And then Sakamoto makes them order, and they too have to order with a smile. They get like teriyaki burgers or something. But anyway, so Sakamoto's supposed to stay on at work. But fast forward to they're in the park, and they're like eating their food that they've just gotten, and they're complaining like, "Oh, there's no sauce,
no straw, there's no syrup.
Straw for my drink. This sucks." And Kubota walks on by, and they're like, "Hey," and he comes up to him, and they demand money, and he goes to give them the envelope. And as they put their hands on the envelope, because clearly a giant corporation has paid this kid in cash,
right,
and he pulls it back and says, "No, this is my money."
Right.
So they beat the crap out of him.
Mm-hmm.
And as they're beating the crap out of him, Sakamoto shows up on a bike. So Kubota is getting the crap beat out of him, and you hear ding, 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 ding. Because
he makes himself known a very specific way. He makes himself known to the enemies.
And he shows up and he's like, I forgot something in your bag. Please allow me to deliver it to you. And I specifically wrote this one down. It was he does these things called special
techniques. Yep. Everything he does, and when he's extra cool, he does like a special technique. He's like, special technique, snow in summer, and it's really him like dusting the ceilings and
So these two particular ones, or the first one in particular, was special technique, straw cigarette. Wind with no destination. And he like darts across the screen, and he gets up next to the dude's head with the straw and goes and
blows cold air into his ear.
And he's like, "Oh
no, I'm being vanquished." And
that was the guy who complained about no straw. And then he goes, duck, dodge. And he's in front of the other guy, and he like karate chops the gum sauce
in a perfect V. It's a perfectly in the eye because he only does things perfectly. So we're gonna take a pause here because I think Wack Donald deserves praise in this. First and foremost, to show how ubiquitous McDonald's is in Japan. Mm-hmm. So this is where I need to do a Kyle explains Japanese things aside. So McDonald's, yes, is very common in Japan. It's called McDonald's. But every anime that brings up McDonald's always does the same thing, in which it turns up the W upside down and calls it McDonald's. Now, you may think that's stupid sounding, but like, if you take the word McDonald's and you make it into a Japanese, how they say it's Mako Donarudo. And if you say Wako Donarudo, it's not that big of a difference, but for us, it's like McDonald's and Whack-Donald's, like stupid and stuff like that. But it's so ubiquitous because sometimes they want to bring out a character who wants to do what's called an Arobaito, which is a German word which means part-time job. And this is something you'll see in a lot of anime, is the idea of Arobaito, that like the people
and they
who are
always
kind of,
put them at a fast food counter.
Yeah. If they're not doing, so there's two types of life in Japan. You're either doing cram school, so you're either studying on top of studying, or you're taking a part-time job. Usually it's a maid cafe. Usually it's McDonald's. Usually it's at a convenience store. And those are the two dichotomies. And it was just really interesting to see you appreciate them ordering. And also you order sets. You don't order meal deals. You don't say like, I'll have a super fries. I'm gonna have a Big Mac set. And it usually comes with like its thing. So I just wanted to step in there because I was just like, you're going to see a lot of Whack-Donald's. You're in a lot of anime. You're like, hey, McDonald's is there. And so just to make sure you know what's going on there. Another thing is you talked about gum syrup. Now, gum syrup is simple syrup. It's what you put in coffee. Sweet. But also I love that when he got the guy's attention, he shot him with like I don't know. I want to say it's like a coffee stir. It's like a thing with like a little point. Like when you're in the back of the neck.
When you're leaving Starbucks and you don't want your coffee to spill, you put the little plug in your coffee cup hole. Yeah.
He hit him with like a dart, like a blow dart, where that goes like, and like it hits him right in the neck, and he's like, "What the hell?" And
so now he vanquishes these two guys, and they're out of the picture, and it sort of was this moment. So this was a movie that failed miserably in the box office, but it's one of my favorite movies. It's become a huge cult hit, which is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. In like the final scene, he pulls a sword out of his chest and says, Scott has learned the power of self-respect. And so that's what Kubota has learned. Is he's learned the power of self-respect by having a job and earning money. And you're like, that's Sakamoto. He sure is swell.
Cool.
He brings like a tide. All boats rise around Sakamoto.
So that's a big theme that I wanted to touch on with the show with you, is that Sakamoto may say things a little gruffly or is very to the point, but he's never rude to people. Nor is someone asks him something. He's always willing to help in his own Sakamoto way. It's just the show is constantly people projecting their worst qualities onto him, assuming he's doing these kind of things. And he ends up showing that he's actually kind of a cool dude, and then he's kind of a nice guy, and then he really wants to make friends. He just doesn't know how to not be perfect for it. So I mean, that's what you constantly get when you have this kind of show, and that's what makes it funny. You get some really funny moments where it just blowing through a straw turns into like this gust of wind, and like hitting with the gum syrup becomes like a lightning shot across the bow. It's Sakamoto's just that damn cool. So
that damn cool.
But his Sakamoto-ness is not exclusive to the men. No. He Sakamoto's the hell out of the girls of the.
Oh my god! Is that the next episode?
That is the next episode. We learned about Aina-chan, who is who you call the pigtails gorilla girl, who has
Aina's a hottie with a body.
She's a hottie with a body, man. She knows like what she wants. She knows how to get it, and but she just can't seem to get through to Sakamoto. So
So Aina has set her sights upon Sakamoto. And she seems like your everyday innocent girl. But there's more behind those eyes.
Oh, right.
And so she decides that she is going to, from her playbook or her Bible.
She's like a magazine that's like techniques to conquer men, that kind of stuff.
Techniques to seduce men.
Right.
and so she goes up to Sakamoto and wants to use the first 4 techniques. Now, sort of in the background, there are 2 other girls in the class, Yagi and I forget the other girl's name. And they're watching her and they're kind of like, oh, Aina's at it again. Didn't she date this person? Just being very catty. And
she does love stealing boyfriends. That's her thing. She doesn't want men. She wants to conquer men. That's her thing.
And so they're like being very catty about her. Not really nice. And so first one is step 1, get yourself close to Sakamoto. And he's at his desk writing, and he's right-handed. So
Yeah.
she says, never sit on the hand that someone's writing because it acts as a wall. So
And
she
visually a wall appears to show the metaphorical wall that
right.
blocks their love, so to speak. Yes.
But then she goes to sit on the other side, and dude is writing with both hands. And she's like,
I'm a
what?
scroll,
He's
mind you.
ambidextrous?
Yeah. I'm like an ancient Japanese scroll. It's just like, and you see the wall getting bigger. She's like, oh no, the wall's getting bigger.
So she's like, fine. I'll sit across from her. And now these girls are watching, and they're like, she failed the first technique of getting a man. So I think the second technique was
say
his name, right?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. That's in the order. Yeah, because the first one she tries to stare at him. She's like, maintain long drawn eye contact with him. But then you see that he X-rays through her head to see what's behind the board.
Oh, that's right. And he writes down Portsmouth.
Yeah, the Battle of Portsmouth.
She's like, what the hell is that? And she turns around, and the teacher had written Portsmouth on the board. He's just looking right through her.
Yeah.
So she's like, fine. To create intimacy with someone, you have to say their name.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is sort of like the beginning of an ongoing gag where no one knows his proper name.
Yeah.
So she starts thinking back to all the times she would see his name or where it would be written, and she can't remember his proper name because, to all those listening, you're often referred to by your surname in Japan, so that's why Sakamoto is his surname.
And it's a big deal. It's a big deal when someone calls you by your first name. Yeah. Like, it means you're actually like a friend.
Yeah, it's very personal.
If I just say just call me Kyle, it means I trust you and I want to have a relationship with you. That's close enough in this regard. So it's a big deal.
So she realizes that she can't remember it. So she said, that's no big deal. I'll just ask him what his name is. And he goes, oh, my proper name? Well, my proper name is, and the girls behind her scratch their nails on the chalkboard so that she can't hear the actual name.
And he's still going. He moves his mouth a bunch.
Right. And he's not going to repeat it. So she's not having it. Does she skip to step 4 where she walks away there?
Yeah, she tries the whole, well, I don't need you or anything
like
that.
So she says, you know what? Maybe another boy would like to help me.
Right.
And so she stands up to walk away, and he says something, and she thinks she's got him. But again, he could not care less.
Could not care less, yes. So she decides to make a real drastic action. She decides to bring out the Japanese version of an ouija board.
Yeah, was it Kuboki?
It's Kukuri-san is the name of the game.
Kukuri-san.
And I'll give a Japan explainer in a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about Kukuri-san. What happens there?
She finds him in a classroom, Sakamoto in a classroom, and she says, let's play Kukuri-san. And he's like, okay, you say it's supposed to be fun. Isn't that like necromancy? And she's like, yeah, it's great. And so these two girls walk by the classroom, and they're like, oh, are you going to play Kukuri-san?
Yeah.
Why don't we play with you? Because they are just V-blocking her.
They're trying to pee in her cereal, man. Let me tell you.
Yeah, they are not letting Aina get anywhere near Sakamoto. Yeah. So they start playing the game, and it's just like a Ouija board. Right. And that now the girls start asking questions that are going to make Aina look bad. And very coolly off to the side, Sakamoto is just watching the game. So they ask like 2 questions because each person gets a question, and somehow Aina manages to push the coin that they're using as a marker to like the preferential answer.
Because she has superhuman strength, apparently, as this thing would say.
So then she asks a question, and they're all fighting with great energy to move it around the board, and the marker, the coin goes right up into the air. And Sakamoto, I don't know if he catches it or what he is.
It just falls on the ground, yeah.
But he pretends to be possessed by a dog. and the girls are like, oh my God, Sakamoto's possessed by a dog. And Sakamoto starts like licking.
Yeah, he's like, well, does that like, he coolly barks. He's like, woof, woof. Sakamoto, woof.
And they're like, Sakamoto, are you okay? And he's like, I am a dog that has possessed Sakamoto's body. And if you don't build what I want you to build, I'm
going
going
to take him to
take
the woods
this
forever.
body to the mountains. And they're like,
Like, no, Sakamoto, don't leave for the mountains.
So for whatever reason, dog possessed Sakamoto. And for those of you listening at home, this episode we're going in far more detail into the episode than any other show we've ever watched, and it's out of the pure absurdity that.
Yes,
is
it's
episode.
completely and utterly absurd.
Right. So this dog possessed Sakamoto asked the girls to build a 6-foot archway for him to like walk through, and so the two mean girls. I don't want to call them mean girls. The two girls that don't like Aina are like, we have to build this arch, and Aina's like, I've never lifted.
She's trying to play like a weakling, yeah, because she doesn't want people to know she's got the freakish strength that she does.
The girls are like, screw you. Sakamoto is not going to be brought to the mountains by this possessed dog spirit. So they start building it, and as they're building it, they think they're on a good path, but all of a sudden, one of the desks, so they're basically stacking school desks on top of one another, and then they're going to bridge the gap at the top of the school desk.
Yeah.
And as they're stacking it, somehow one of them falls, and as it's about to fall on Yagi, Aina finds the inner strength, and she steps in, and she puts her hand up, and she stops it. And she says, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for Sakamoto.
Oh, yeah.
And Yagi's like, I understand. And so they finish and they build the project together. On all fours, Sakamoto leaps from his desk on top of this archway. And he gets up there and he goes, what am I doing up here? What has happened? And so the possession is gone.
Yeah.
But Yagi turns to Aina and she says, you seem nice. You seem like someone I could be friends with. Let's walk home, and grabs her wrist, and they like bolt out the door.
Yeah.
And Sakamoto clearly has had the Seducing Men Bible.
Yeah.
He goes, my experiment has come to a completion.
Yeah.
By working together under tense situation, the three women have come together in friendship. Yet again, like the tide with Sakamoto.
It's so cool.
He's so cool.
God, Sakamoto's so cool. Let's talk into so we don't have to go too much into it because I want people to really experience this for themselves. And there is one episode I definitely want to talk about is if I was to explain an analog for Sakamoto, he is the Mary Poppins of anime.
Yeah.
And you tell me what you think about that idea, right? A mysterious character comes out of nowhere, and just through the back fact of being perfect makes you better.
And also Mary Poppins is a little brusque with how she describes things and how she sort of lays the truth on you even when you don't want to hear it. Like, hey, get your crap together.
Right.
You know?
And I think for Sakamoto, it's another thing is that he will take you to your word for almost perfectly and then morph it to something that makes you feel better. So he said, so he didn't, for Kubota, for example, he didn't make him feel like he was a victim ever in that situation. Like because he was going.
He empowered him.
Right. But also he was saying like, so you're telling me that the problem is that you're getting bullied because you ran out of money. That's the problem is you ran out of money. That's what you're telling me. You're telling me that like the problem is that you're getting bullied and you're being forced to, or that you're not having the self. You're telling me that it's about money. All right, we'll just give you money. So the only way I know to get money is that you get a job. So let's go do it. Let's do it. Right. Yeah. He takes you very much literally at your context, right? Or he notices Aina's trying to win him over through duplicitous and or, through some sort of means that is supposed to be kind of conniving and stuff like that. So he's like, all right, but I also want to see if this works for friendship. Well, I'll take it at your face value. Let's see if this thing actually works. And he moves forward there. He also extends it forward to like the delinquent group that has a leader that constantly asks him for more and more things. And he goes, oh, you want me to give you all this stuff? Sure, I'll give you all this stuff. And he does it so perfectly. And then all of a sudden he makes the whole, like, I'm just really sick of giving this guy tasks to do. That I'm like, just do what you think pleases me. And then that's when Sakamoto goes full speed. He's like, oh yeah, I can't wait to Sakamoto the situation. Also, a little of a side, the idea that like he calls him by like whistling, and Sakamoto has a like trash can and broom, and he goes and he like runs full speed, throws a projector at a rock. The rock hits this broom, and he like springboards to the boss and has a plate of like 7-Eleven sandwiches, and it's like on a perfect display. Like it's just very quintessentially how funny this show is. But it's like, oh yeah, you want me to serve you? Oh, I'll serve you. And he's like, oh, but I didn't want your feet to get cold, so I grilled your shoes, or like, oh man, it looks like you're running. And when he was trying to run away from hide from me, he's like, oh, are you tired and you want to stay here? I'm gonna make you the best luxury hotel bed in this gym using the mats and stuff like that. And it kind of showed him like, yeah, I'll take your word for it. You want to tell me that this is for, because you're telling me this is for the next generation, right? You're my senpai. You're there to tell me how to be an adult, and you're above me. And I as a Japanese person, value that experience. And so he's like, all right, I'll take your value for it. And he just constantly makes them realize that like that stuff's bullheaded. So, but yeah, so I would just say he's very much the Mary Poppins character.
I think that is an astute and well-placed description.
He's also a little magical. You know, if you think about it, he's a little magical, right? Like, there's no reason why he could jump.
Scene? I don't even remember what episode it was. He was walking in the rain with an umbrella, and there was a sparrow fighting the wind. And when he saw the sparrow was weak, he like grabbed it and like leapt into the air and created like an eye of the hurricane where both he and the sparrow were floating back down to earth on his like umbrella. So,
and only when he finally caught the bird, the heavens opened, and the sun shined, and he just like was like, yada yada, I'm gonna float down and stuff like that. So.
Right, so he kept saying yada yada, and we've already like recorded like a joke based on it for the intro to the episode. But what is yada yada?
You will find that there's always going to be a male archetype that is going to be like Sakamoto, but it's like always kind of connivingly jovial. So he's always like yada yada means like, my goodness, it's very. If you want me to tell you, it's essentially the oh my that's said by George Takei. Like if you want to hear like oh my. So it's silk, but it's always silky, and the character's always like the kind of smiling, like nodding, like he's always the like cool, calm, flirtatious guy. So it kind of gives Sakamoto the almost kind of flirty, like, oh my, what's happening here? Oh my goodness, is this happening? Like he's like a cat that's rubbing himself against things. Just
oh my,
like,
yada yada.
Yeah, and I think if you want me to believe, because George Takei is Japanese, I bet his oh my comes from the yada yada. So I think so. It's very much the same. So so it gives him that air of like coolness, but also like kind of flirtatious, even though he doesn't want to be. But yeah, I think it's really funny that he is always like encouraging people. He's always trying to make things happen, even when it would be a detriment to him. And no more so is that the case than when he coolly buys porn. I told you to skip episode 6. So just so you know, Garrett, episode 6 is kids are trying to play these like dumb games of like don't step on the crack, break your mother's back, and he like he does his own thing, and the kids are trying to beat him, and it becomes this thing. So I was like, just skip that. That's filler. So I had Garrett watch because I thought it was just bizarre. So, the tips and tricks of how to coolly buy porn.
Somewhere in like episode 4, and I guess this is like a running theme, somewhere around episode 4 or 5, one of the vignettes was called "Is Sakamoto a Pervert?"
Yes.
and the sum of it was, no, he wasn't. He was trying to save an injured bird.
Right.
I can't give you more detail than that. So when we hit episode 7, the name of it is No, really.
No, really.
Sakamoto a pervert?
No, really. Is he a pervert? And for good reason.
Because, yet again, Sakamoto is in the video rental store.
Right.
And he runs into Achan and the other bullies in there. Not the bullies, but the trio. We'll call them the trio.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's trying to rent a movie about a sparrow.
And for a school project. He doesn't do things for enjoyment. He exclusively does things for school.
Right.
So
they find out about this, and they get to the copy of it before he gets there, and they pull the copy out, so they've got like the DVD in their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, if you want this DVD, you're going to have to do something for us. And he's like, what? And they're like, rent porn. and there's like, and we all remember this growing up in the 90s and 2000s. There's like the curtain, and it has section. Like the number 18.
You're just waiting for the wind to blow by so you can see what magical prepubescent wonders were behind that.
How many times you could like sort of like walk by it and be like, oh, and try and get like a peek. So one of the guys is like, I got this rental card here, and I got my brother's ID, my older brother's ID, and you're gonna rent this porn for us. And he's like, okay. And so
I'll take you at your word. Everything is flat.
But it's not just buying porn because they're going to direct him through it as if it's a spy movie.
Yeah.
So, so they're like talking to him, like he puts like his smartphone in his pocket, and they can like talk to him, and he can hear
And
them.
it's very much like a mission. It's like,
Right.
the next thing you want to do is you want to go through the Korean section. Like,
Right, right. And so the first things first is they're like, you can't get into the over 18 room unless the wind blows the curtain open, and that's your opportunity.
Right.
So he's pacing like the aisles in front of it, and they're like, oh my goodness, he's being so thorough. He's trying not to be noticed. He's walking around in a circle. Wait. He is using centrifugal force to create wind, and next thing you know, he blows open the curtain and poof, he's gone.
Vanishes. Sakamoto.
He's
So
in there. He's in there for like 15 minutes because they're like, "Oh my god, it's taking so long," and he comes out with like 12 porn movies.
And he comes out in a. He couldn't just do that. He had to come out, and they said, "Ooh, it's like an Asian fan dance," because he's like, "Oh," and he like fans them open.
At this point, my wife is watching this episode with me, and she goes, "This show is so stupid."
But he's so cool.
So they're like, "All right, step 1, you got the porn complete. Step 2, you got to check it out."
Ooh, that sounds dangerous. And
so,
they also make it seem like Metal Gear Solid, and that there's sentinels of the girls walking by, because the girls are very, like, because Aina-san, Yagi-san, and the other girl are there to, like...
So they're like, there are 3 girls from our class who are hiding in this video store, and you have got to avoid them.
Right.
So they get him past the first girl. Not a problem.
Not a problem for
They get him past the second girl. That was a breeze. But at this point, he's supposed to make a hard right into the Korean section. But there's a problem. Up till now, in the 7th episode, he's become pretty close with Kubota, the guy whom he helped gain self-respect, trying to take him under his wing. But there's an issue there. And we're not going to talk about it in this podcast, but Kubota's mom has the biggest lady boner for Sakamoto.
She's thirsty for that D, man. She wants some Sakamoto D so bad.
She thinks he looks like this Korean guy named Chan Chorizo, and she is like...
It's such a stupid name for a Korean man. It's a Chinese name and a Portuguese sausage. Like, what the hell? It's just like Chan Chorizo. And he's like boating in the river on a barrel. I don't know. It made no sense, but like, you're like, whatever. So
she's in the Korean section because I don't know if this is maybe you could tell me this, but apparently Korean, if I were to just watch this show, I would understand that Koreans have a million different hyper romantic storyline movies.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, she's in the section. It's like she's in the Danielle Steele section of the movie store, and so he skips over it. But by skipping over it, he puts himself at risk of being caught by one of the girls, and one of them catches him, and they're like Sakamoto-kun, and like an alarm going off in the store, the other girls are like, Sakamoto, and they all
dun, 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 and like the exclamation point comes out, and he's like patrolling the halls looking for him. He's like,
and in what might be my favorite moment from the entire series up to episode 7 is they say, Sakamoto, what did you rent? And he just looks at them, and he takes a beat, and he starts doing the robot dance.
And he like turns, and he like...
And he robot sets them on the shelf. And
the porn into the Korean section.
And he's like, how about that weather today? And the trio who are watching him go, oh my God, he distracted him with the robot dance method.
It's so stupid, but and you're like, whatevs. And he finally gets the counter.
Yeah.
Porn in
talk
hand.
us through the counter, man.
So they're like, what are you going to do about it? You got to pretend, make sure you, and he goes, just wait and see. And he starts drawing on his arm.
Right.
The owner.
Can I ask you something there?
Yeah.
Real quick? This is now the 3rd anime you've watched where, so the trio says, what is he doing? Is he writing on his hand? And one of the guy goes, no. He's doing the person character on his hand. Even Sakamoto must get nervous. So I've noticed in now this is the third anime.
Megumi did that too. Yeah.
When you get nervous, you do a character in your hand. Is that like a stress relief?
And it's actually like really bumpkiny. It's done a lot in like the northern Hokkaido, Akito thing. Is you draw the person logo, which is the character kind of looks like a Y upside down, essentially, a lowercase Y upside down, or like the Half-Life symbol. You know?
Okay.
And what you do is not only do you draw, but you eat it. So you just keep doing it, and it's a way to like, get rid of the
conquer
bad
your
luck.
fear.
It was also a way to get rid of bad luck.
Okay.
So that's really what it's for. It's saying like, ooh, bad luck's coming. I gotta. It's like kind of like crossing your fingers. It's like doing all that stuff to make it happen. But it also like, it's a very like bumpkiny thing to do. So, but yeah, he does that, but that's what they think he's doing. And so he goes to the front counter, and the guy's like, "Got this. I got this mofo. I know he's a high school student, so I'm gonna ask him the question." He's like, "Will that be all, sir?" And he goes, "No," and he puts even more porn onto the table, and he's like, "Oh, the man is so confident in himself, he's going to buy a lot of porn." And he's like, "All right, question 2, how long will you have it for?" And he's like, 1 day. And the guy's like, "What is this man planning on doing for this whole time?" And he's like, "All right," and they make it seem like he's getting knocked out in like a real fight, and he's like, "Oh, sir, I don't know about you." And then all of a sudden Sakamoto pulls out his wrist. And there's what he did with his wrist is he drew a watch, and I guess with his pasty ass white skin, it flashed at the guy and it made it look like it was like an expensive watch. And he's like, he has to be an adult because only adults would buy an expensive watch. And you know luxury goods more than I do. Apparently it was like a very fancy.
I didn't know the name that they dropped. But
apparently it's a big deal. So he was able to buy the porn after all that. Got his bird movie, and they're like, "Hey, you want to watch that porn with Sakamoto?" And Sakamoto's like, "No, I'm good," and he just takes his thing and goes.
And so the trio, and again, how Sakamoto makes everyone around him better.
Yep.
They say Sakamoto didn't want to come to our weird porn viewing party.
Porn viewing party?
How could he turn that down? If he could turn that down, he must be quite the man. And then it cuts to them staring at the return bin.
The bag is, by the way, like a tote bag loaded with porn.
It's like one of those giant blue IKEA tote bags.
It's like this giant heaping tote of just smut.
And they just put it back in. And they again,
in the return bin, mind you. They put it in the return bin. They're like, after he spent all that money, they spent all that money on it. They put it in the return bin.
Absolutely.
Because he makes you better. And another really, just a very quick, like another wholesome moment I thought was really good was that they were going to do the all the guys were trying to like make him look bad on like the sports day that they have. Everybody, we have those in the United States, but they had like a sports day, and eventually they got to the three-legged the race where you relay race. Thank you, Garrett. Jeez Louise, I'm like, I can explain Kokuri-san no problem, but relay race comes up and I start to yammer, and so it's Sakamoto, it's Yagi, who's the girl that's friends with Aina, and then it's our good friend, Chucklebelly Yuya who has it. And so Yuya wants again to sabotage this man by tying his shoes. And so Sakamoto gets the pull, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm tied up. What am I going to do?" And he's in mid-fall. So finally, Sakamoto's going to get him.
But wait, as he's about to do this, one of the teachers has like a safari flashback. He goes, "I remember something like this in Africa."
And I also love that there's a fan section for Sakamoto, and like this old lady standing there with like a piece of paper, and all of a sudden it unrolls this large scroll that's like, "I want you so badly, Sakamoto." And so he goes, so instead of falling, his shoes are still tied, mind you. How's he going to get out of the situation? He puts the baton into his mouth. He goes into a 4-point cheetah stance, and now he's running as if he's a cheetah in the safari. Hence your quote before. He goes to hand it to Yagi. Yagi's like, "All right, now we're finally caught up. It's on to me. Then I'm going to give it to Yuya. He's the anchor." But unfortunately, there's saliva on this baton, this very slippery baton, and she drops it. Having a terrible time, right? She tries to make it around.
She's devastated, crestfallen, heartbroken.
Yuya Seda is now sitting there, and he's like, "Well, I guess that's it for us. We're not really going to do it." Sakamoto got me again, and then Sakamoto, as he's untying his shoes, goes, "Just letting you know, Yuya, this is going to be her memory of of a very important moment for her high school sports day. That's all I said. Didn't say anything else for that. And then Yuya Seta goes, can't have that happen to her. And so instead, because he knows he can't win the race, what does he do? He decides to get fully butt-ass naked and run and like has the baton in front of his penis like so now he makes up for her mess up that would really, that was really like bothering her to now being like, I'm the asshole now. Look at me.
She brings it up at the lunch table with Aina and she's like, oh God, I'm so sorry I ruined the relay. And Aina's like, what are you talking about? Yo-Yo Sarah looked like a moron.
He was a disgrace to men is what he said. Because you see him, he's like, ha ha ha, and he's got his belly out, and he's getting fully naked with the baton in front of his crotch. And then Yagi goes up into Yuya Seta, and he's like, you know what? You're kind of cool. And he finally got a woman to admit that he was cool. And all it took was Sakamoto, my friend.
She didn't say you're cool. She said, you're cooler than I thought you were.
What?
So no matter how low
you got to give us pear-shaped men some sort of hope that if we just run around naked, women are going to think we're cool.
We had a friend in high school. That's what he thought would work.
So what we got to
show was so stupid, but so fun. And again, the guffaws, like, I didn't chuckle. Some of the absurdity just caused me to, like, spasmodically go, ha! And just, like, really let it out.
So that's the question is, did you think the humor was so Japanese that an average viewer couldn't get it? Like, for example, I'll give you one that I know would have flown over your head. Yuya Seta saw them eating rice balls, which is called onigiri. It's these like triangle rice balls. Everybody should know that, right? But he was making a joke because oni means demon and giri means slash or cut. So he was saying, is it a rice ball or is it a demon slash, using the pun of onigiri? But it was like, in English, you didn't get it because, like, are those rice balls or are those slice balls? And I remember going, like, Garrett's not going to get that joke. He's not. He's not going to get that joke. So besides those, like, obviously Japanese punny things, is this a funny show for you? Could someone...
But it's not for everyone.
Right.
You always ask me, like, barriers to entry. You know who would dig this? If you like Monty Python, Faulty Towers, kind of absurdist, at times slapstick, irreverent humor. Right. This is so up your alley because I'm laughing at how redonkulous it is. I'm not laughing because someone told a funny joke. Right. That's not why I'm laughing. No, absolutely. It's off center. It's not for everyone, but it's not because it's Japanese. Right. It's because that's the style of humor it is.
And I agree. And I think there is some universality to the idea of the show of what makes it funny. Like, you don't necessarily have to get the Japaneseisms to get it to happen. You don't have to understand the cultural implications of it. Sometimes just the idea that, like, the guy gets splashed in the face with a water fountain and he's like, I'm going to get Sakamoto this time. It's Wile E. Coyote humor, right? He steps on the pedal and instead goes, and he gets like fully, and all the girls like, yeah, and like the fact that like, ooh, he got me again. Like it takes you back to that time of being in the like the Looney Tunes era, and you know.
Oh, speaking of which, if we can go, let's put a pin right there. Looney Tunes era. Earlier, you made a comment about how these guys who are always trying to get him in that first episode, pulling the chair out. You made a reference to Wile E. Coyote. Yeah. There is an episode where they literally dig a hole in the ground. Yes. And they put cardboard on top of it, and Sakamoto falls into it, and they don't see him come out, and they think he's dug a hole to Brazil.
and the boy-loving boy is like, I'm gonna go to Brazil with Sakamoto. Banzai! And like falls in there, and then it ends up going like, wasn't as deep as you thought because it was only like 10 feet deep. And he was like, woo. It was like that kind of stuff. Like, if you don't mind, if you want to give yourself a time to go back to your childhood in which a guy, you know, rabbit season, duck season, duck season, you know, blow in your face, or kind of comedy is your thing.
Famous Bugs Bunny cross-dressing opera episode.
Right. If that's your thing, if you don't mind, you know, relaxing a little bit, then it's going to be funny. And if you just kind of don't take it too seriously. So that leaves me into our Weeb and Noob score. And once again, for those who are watching this for the first time, a short summary is that our Weeb Noob score really reflects what a fan of any level would get out of this in terms of better understanding the genre, right? So it doesn't mean it's good or bad. The score just means for a fan versus someone who's new, what would this show mean to your overall viewing pleasure, basically. And for that, I'm going to give this a solid 7. Now, it's even higher than Parasite, which is weird, you know, because Parasite's thick. It's got depth. But I also love and appreciate the manga and anime that don't make you think that much. And this was a no-thinker.
Candy.
You can legit, like, I remember last episode you said you can get to episode 5, get to that aha moment, and walk away. Like, like watching Game of Thrones, getting the Red Wedding, and be like, that blew my mind. I don't know how they're going to go with this, and I'll stop. Or I'll take a break for a while. This, you can go a half episode and stop. That is like you can have one Skittle, be like, ooh, that's cherry, and then put the bag down. That is what this show is. And that's why I think it's enjoyable, it's funny, you can get it, there's a lot of universality. If you're an anime fan like me and you love looking at little Japanese things that are true to like your experience there, like McDonald's and like Kokuri-san, or like things like, ooh, cool, that's very Japanese, I love that, you're gonna really appreciate it. So would I say go out and watch it now? Yeah, there's plenty of other things you can watch, but like if you want to take a break, this is the perfect one to do it.
Right. And for me, you always ask, would I keep watching it? Well, I'm gonna give it, for my Weeb and Noob score, I'm gonna give it a 7.5. Okay. And it sort of goes into, would I keep watching it? And the answer is yes, but not immediately.
Right.
I would use this, and I do not mean this to be derogatory, I would use this as a palate cleanser.
Yeah, like the
if I watched a season of Breaking Bad and I wanted to jump out the window, I would put a half episode of this on and be brought back to earth in a delightful and funny way. Yeah. So I know that there's not a lot of it. I know there's 12 episodes, and a lot of times being a completionist, I'd be at 7 already and be like, well, let me just finish 12. Yeah. I'd rather dole it out, and it doesn't even matter in which form it comes. Nope. I'm sure they put some sort of conclusion on it.
It's very Saturday morning cartoon. Very much like...
And you can just revisit it and laugh, and it's there's nothing groundbreaking about the animation. There's nothing groundbreaking about the story. It's just good fun.
Yeah. Don't have to take it too seriously.
And so that's why I give it a 7.5, because you'd never kick a 7.5 out of bed.
Right. Exactly. I think that's true. I don't think anybody would ever kick Sakamoto out of bed, because it's just so cool. No,
you would not, especially Kubota's mom.
So that in mind, knowing that this is quick read, quick watch, enjoy yourselves at any point, enjoy it at your leisure. If you want a good guffaw, good chortle, good moment of mirth, I'll definitely watch this show. But for that, I still want to hear your thoughts. Did Sakamoto make you so enamored by his coolness, his cool attitude, his hot demeanor, that it just made you want to keep watching? Did you kind of think this was kind of silly and stupid and just put it aside? Or do you have somewhere in between? We want you to put yourself in the comments below, because we really want to keep this conversation going. Sometimes we want to go long with these really heavy pieces like Full Metal Alchemist, and sometimes we just want to go into the cheap candy, that section that is Sakamoto. So for that, we want to hear what it means to you as a fan, or regardless of your level. But before we end the episode, Garrett, any last minute thoughts you want to say before we end off?
Well, apparently Sakamoto and I have a few things in common. I noticed during one of the episodes that he gets 100 on a lot of tests in high school. And while I may not have gotten 100 in math or history like he did, we both got 100 in health for having knowledge of sex surpassing the average.
So much so that you can bring out a rice dinner out there. So with that in mind, we are going to end our night in a similar fashion. We're going to go off to dinner, feed our little sparrows out of our shirts, and give ourselves a nice, easy-going half episode further of Sakamoto. So with that being said, can't wait to talk to you again, Garrett, and have a great week, everybody.
Peace out, everyone.
Reveal your secret technique by pushing that subscribe button.
And use your Sakamoto-esque cool glasses to look up the next great thing that we should watch.
その生徒の名は
坂本ですが。